kind introduction. Please follow me in my journeys, and I'd love to have you introduce me again. I appreciate your friendship and the kind words, and I appreciate everyone carving out a bit of time today to talk about the future of our country and the privilege that I have of being able to serve you and your families in Washington. I will tell you, after being on assignment for 4 months in Washington, it's good to be with normal people. People who created jobs and deal with reality and look at a budget, a family budget or a business budget, and make decisions off of hard facts and let good facts lead them to good conclusions. I sought this office, it's amazing, almost 2 years ago. I ran 17 months full-time every day, all day. I interviewed with you, your neighbors, our friends, and thankfully, you hired me on November the 2nd at 7 p.m. And then you told me to report to work on January the 5th of this year. I've done that, and so this is pretty much our 120-day performance review. And I work for you. I really believe that, and so I look forward to the question and answer time at the end, so you can hold me accountable. I do consider it just a deep honor to represent you and your families in Congress, and I see it as an act of service. I ran on a platform of 4 objectives. We set these 4 priorities. First is job creation. Second was cutting federal spending that's threatening each and every one of us. Third was being the strongest advocate for our men and women in uniform. And fourth, changing Congress rather than having Congress change me, which happens so often with folks who go up to Washington. They start out with good purpose and good intent, and then something happens up there, and it's not good what happens to them. So I want to briefly cover the actions that we've taken on those 4 objectives, and I do want to be brief. I have learned that the shorter the time of the speech, the more the applause at the end. So with that in mind, I want to close by sharing with you a kind of a first-hand account of the process by which I came to the conclusion to vote against the last continuing resolution, to vote against the last budget. You always wonder, what's it like up there? Well, as best as I can in a short amount of time, I want to give you, just compress down the sequence of events that led me to voting no on those 2 particular measures that came before us. First, on job creation. I was speaking to my friend Susie. We were talking about this. I am really committed to stopping and ideally reversing what I refer to as a hyperactive regulatory environment. I'm not a Neanderthal. I'm not a person who says no regulation. I do believe in smarter, lighter regulations, environmental, workplace, business, or banking rather, just common sense regulations that protect our environment, that let our bankers loan money, and let us have safe working environments, but don't go so far as to choke the life out of a job creator, someone who's trying to put money at risk and put precious and limited capital at risk to create a job. It's not easy, and there's some folks up there in Washington that as these things are passed, I just don't think they understand the burden that is carried by small business owners. We've had some early success. We repealed the $600 1099 provision. That was done with bipartisan support. And one of the joys, and I think real fun parts about serving in Congress, and there are some of those, is that all those things you used to yell at the TV. I get to not yell it, but rather make a case on the House floor. So I was talking about the $600 1099 provision, and it wasn't in my notes, but I just kind of got going a little bit, and I said, the folks who passed this had no clue what it means and what it takes to create a job, and what it would mean. $600 worth of gas purchases from the local gas station, you'd have to write them a 1099. Things like that. You'd have to, if you bought a Macintosh laptop, you'd have to send a 1099 to Apple computers. It's just not smart. So we've done that. I voted in favor of a series of bills that I believe responsibly constrain the EPA, which I think is a bit hyperactive, voted to repeal the healthcare law and work diligently to replace it with something there's so much uncertainty there. Remember, the speaker said at the time, we have to pass the bill to know what's in it, and there's still, that bill truly is kind of evolving as to what's involved there and how it's going to affect our businesses. So I voted to repeal it. That hasn't been done yet. It has to go, of course, to the Senate and the President, but that's my position on that. I was among the first to join the Job Creators Caucus. You know, birds of a feather flock together, I guess, and I've become good friends with a fellow named Rigell. And Reed, first-time elected official, and he owns a roofing company. He's from Wisconsin, and we often find ourselves voting similarly, and so we sat next to each other, and he had the idea to create the Job Creator Caucus, and I'm in it, and happy to do that, and we're coming up, we're going to go on a road show here and talk to more small businesses about what we've got to do to get our economy going again. And our co-sponsor, this is very important, this has a lot of local impact, and it's a clear divergence between the President and myself and others, is that I co-sponsored 3 bills that would, in a responsible way, call upon the administration to allow us to, in an environmentally responsible way, to leverage these resources that we have off the coast of Virginia. I believe this is critical for our local economy. It's critical for our country. We have $500 billion a year that should be circulating within the American economy. And it's going to folks in Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. And these folks, their values often do not align with ours. And the long-term impact of this is, if we don't correct it, it's going to be very, very hurtful to the next generation of Americans. So I'm committed to leveraging those in an environmentally responsible way. I've voted to reduce corporate tax rates, and I'd be happy to have a discussion about this. You know, local companies still, great manufacturer, right there in Virginia Beach, all automated. You ought to go in there and see it. These robots are going down the way, and if you step in front of them, they stop. It's pretty scary, really. But they've said, you know, Scott, we're competitive with our subsidiaries in Central America. We're competitive with our subsidiary in China on a piece-by-piece basis. We are not competitive in an after-tax return. And see, this is the environment that we live in. Manufacturers can go and move globally. We need to be competitive globally. This isn't something that we can just define our own reality. The reality is defined. We have to compete against other countries and make this, as our good governor's doing, he's making Virginia the best place to create and grow a business, and we need to make America the best place to create and grow a business. Locally, we worked hard, not totally pleased with the outcome, but we really worked hard with General Odierno with respect to JeffCom. We have a comprehensive plan to keep the carriers here, and I say carriers plural deliberately because indeed, if all of that work is done in Mayport, the high likelihood is that we would have not 1 but 2 carriers go, which would be it would just be a structural blow to our economy. So we have a comprehensive plan to do what we think is right, we know is right, which is to keep the carriers here. If I truly thought it was a matter of national security for the carriers to be dispersed, I would support that. But in talking with others and looking at the situation, we can mitigate the risk of keeping the carriers here, and that's what we're determined to do. Working closely with Admiral Harvey on outlying field for our aviation to be able to train, and that's a critical part, and I appreciate his leadership. One of the joys, again, of running and serving in office is you learn so much about your community, and I knew about modeling and simulation, but I see it now, just the unbelievable potential that is represented with our leadership here at Old Dominion and outlying areas for modeling and simulation. And I want to be a strong advocate for that. Leveraging this wonderful natural asset we have, the Port of Hampton roads, and we have 50 feet of water, and other ports to the south, so they don't. That's all right. And it represents a tremendous potential when the Panama Canal is widened a few years from now. This is going to give us a real competitive advantage and really open up our opportunity to improve the good volume that we're already doing. And really, most importantly, I was speaking to Ben today, or one of our bankers here, and just talking about the importance of rolling back Dodd-Frank. I don't think that was a wise bill. I think it was an overcorrection. And what happens so often, doesn't it, in government? You end up with this pendulum, and it just swings too far to the other side. And that's what's happened here. Dodd-Frank is the bill that really, I think, has constricted, restrained our bankers. I've not met a local banker who's not said that they feel like they could do more business in a responsible way if we lifted many of the provisions and maybe even started over with what was passed with Dodd-Frank. So those are some of the practical areas that will create more of a marketplace environment that would give a hard-working business owner or some entrepreneur, maybe a school teacher who says, you know, I think I'm ready to quit my job and start my business out of my garage. You know, you gotta believe that you're going to have a stable economy, and you got to believe that things are going to get a bit better, and that kind of leads me to the point of cutting federal spending. I truly believe that cutting federal spending in a responsible way and reducing it to a level that we can afford that matches our revenue is in and of itself an act of job creation. You know, people say, what have the Republicans done to create jobs? Like you're going to pass a bill that just says create jobs. Shows the flaw of the logic there. It's the job creator himself or herself that's going to create the job. And what happens is when we are borrowing 41 cents of every dollar we're spending, you don't have to be an accountant. You don't have to be a CPA. You just know deep inside something's not right, and we're all at risk. We're a ship that is at risk, and we're headed into some tough seas. Just got to let that sink in. There's not a person, there's not a family, there's not a business, and there's not a country as strong as we are that can stay on this path. This frames my decisions in Congress. So if you want to know why did Rigell vote that way, I see things through this prism. And if I'm wrong, please come up to me and tell me. Show me some slides. Show me some statistics. Every one that I look at with 30 years experience of reading financial statements and a master's degree in business tells me that my deep concern is justified. So, I was delighted to vote for House Resolution 1, H.R. 1. We passed it. It went over to the Senate. The Majority Leader said it's dead on arrival. And they haven't done a whole lot over there. I'm not a partisan guy. Really, I'm not. At my core, I'm not a partisan person. But there's something distinctly different about what's taking place in the Senate and what's taking place in the House. If they don't like our bill, it's still incumbent upon them to pass a bill or amend our bill. You remember in 9th grade when you took the civics lesson? This is how a bill is created. It's not happening, y'all. We send a bill over. If they don't like it, that's fine. But amend it. Send it back so we can go to conference. But that's not taking place. Now, I voted, and proudly so, for the path to prosperity, sometimes known as the Paul Ryan budget. Folks have said it's extreme and trying to position it as such. And I see these carefully chosen talking points. Y'all, do you know how long we'd be borrowing money under the Paul Ryan path to prosperity? How many years we continue to spend more than we have coming in? 26 years. This is the program that's extreme. 26 years. Every year we'd be spending more money than we're taking in. That's how bad it is. I mean, that's how far they've spread out the pain. You decide if that's extreme. Now, final point here, changing Congress rather than having Congress change me. That's probably the most audacious part of this deal. Maybe even more difficult than getting a handle on the federal spending is just how do you go up there and survive that climate and not get all caught up in it. Well, I do believe in leadership by example. Principle I learned at Paris Island in 1978. You can't ask somebody to do something and not lead yourself. So we cut our spending back to 2008 levels. That was before John Boehner said that the Republicans were going to cut it by 5%. I couldn't understand how we increased spending for congressional offices by 8% when we were just running huge deficits. So we rolled ours back to 8% voluntarily, more than the Speaker had called for later on. I declined a host of personal benefits. I thought that was important, and the Lead by Example Act, which I appreciate you noting that there. And in going against the advice, I mean the outright advice of many members of my party, when you get elected, they bring you in a room, they say, here's how you're going to get reelected. Leverage your frank mail. Send out hundreds of thousands of dollars of franked mail. You'll build your name ID up, and somebody won't want to run against you. I'm listening to this and I'm offended. This is what's wrong with Washington. Using taxpayer dollars to get an advantage over a challenger. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an Independent. It's just wrong. So, consistent with my campaign pledge, we're sending out no more than 2 pieces per year, a little black and white, simple piece that kind of gives you some basic information, and we're not going to use that frank mail that way. And I know that's the right thing to do. So, the last part here, being the strongest advocate for our men and women in uniform. What a privilege it is. It just hits me sometimes. I think, man, I represent the highest concentration of men and women in uniform in the country. I serve on the Armed Services Committee in Virginia. I'm a Virginian. This is just good. It's a real privilege. And so some of the things we've done there, I had the privilege of visiting our troops in Afghanistan. I had the privilege of being in our embassy in Pakistan and just understanding the profound challenges that are taking place there. Our men and women in uniform, unbelievable. Their esprit de corps, their professionalism, the sacrifice that they're making for all of us, unbelievable. So we're looking to make sure they have the best leadership, the best equipment, the best, the training, everything they need to be successful in a clearly defined mission. We'll talk about that too in Libya if you'd like. And it really brings me to, why, and I want to wrap it up with this, is why I voted, all the love and respect for our troops. Why would the representative from the 2nd District of Virginia vote against a continuing resolution and then vote against a budget? Some would argue, some would make the case that, well, he doesn't support the troops. I welcome the opportunity, if I ever get in a debate, to talk about that, to someone to challenge my commitment to our troops as the son of an Iwo Jima veteran and the son and the proud father of a 3rd-generation Marine. I'm ready for the challenge. Now, this needs to be said. Now, I'm so sorry my friend Bobby Scott isn't here, my colleague. He's a good man. We have disagreements on many matters, but we work together on so many good things. I think he'd agree with me on this. I don't know. I don't speak for the congressman, but I think he'd agree that there are elements within both parties that improperly leverage the compensation of our troops to get other things passed. They may deny it, but they do. I have seen it. I spoke to John Boehner and the leadership of my party 3 different times in conference, looked them eye to eye, and I said, we can and we must carve out defense. We must pay our men and women irrespective of what might happen over here on some of these other issues. Pay them. Pay them. Get that out of the way. I was never satisfied with the answer I was given. So I find myself then faced with, this is the best we can do, $38 billion It funds the troops. All right. Well, let's take a look. I don't think 38 in and of itself is enough, but I think it was a Friday night, I believe. Esmel, you were there. Pretty tense there in the office, and I was trying to wrestle with this, and as a part of this process, I tried to understand exactly what I was getting. You sent a businessman to Washington, so I tried to proof the numbers. I couldn't have our staff try to proof the numbers, couldn't get there, because those are the numbers I was given. So I said to my staff, I said, let me show you how we do it in the private sector. We're just going to get the job done. I said, get the speaker's office on the phone and get their top budget person. Their eyes got real big because we're calling the speaker's office. And I met with a nice lady. She was very kind, and I'm not trying to make fun of anything here, but as she was walking me through these numbers, and my staff was there, she said, well, now this 18 billion, these are chimps. These are changes in mandatory spending. She says, now tell you the truth, Congressman, they really weren't intended to be spent anyway, so they're not really spending cuts. And I'm just thinking, you're walking right into the trap. I was smiling, and she's explaining all this to me. And after she left, I looked at my staff. I said, you see what's wrong with this place? Everybody's up there beating their chest how the largest cuts in American history, both parties. Largest cuts, it's like a retailer, y'all, marking up a used car to tell you the next day you're getting great savings. All right? So I processed that, and I was trying to process all of this, and I rewound the tape, 17 months of running, and conversations with you and your friends and your neighbors. I'm telling you, I couldn't recall a conversation that would lead me to vote for that. Every conversation I had was, man, we are scared to death. We got to fix this. We got to make good decisions, wise decisions, and make them now. And I thought, that's why I'm here. If I'm here for 2 years, that's great. If I'm here for no more than 2 years, that's all right. I got a full and complete life. My dog loves me. My wife loves me. I'm good. So, walked in, about that time, phone rings. Congressman, it's the whip's office. It's the whip. When you vote against your leadership, you start to meet interesting people. And I said, listen, I don't want to talk to him over the phone. I want to talk to him in person. Is he in his office? She said, yes. I said, okay, I want to go see him. He's got and listen, I respect Kevin McCarthy. He's a good man. I was treated with respect at all times. Scott, where are you on this? I'm not with you. We should have carved out the fence, and this 38, it's not, in my view, it's not 38, it's not enough. And this is this classic, the battle is always around the corner. Just work with us right now. Just work with us. It's always just work with us. The fight's around the corner. That's how we got here in the first place. I said, I'm not going to be part of it. So I voted that way, voted no, and now I want to be part of the solution too. So I immediately, I'm doing it this week. I'm going to introduce a bill that would keep us from being in this position of improperly leveraging the compensation of troops. The advance appropriations encourage you to get informed or stay informed. If you're already informed, thank you. If you know a little bit if you can explain the difference between the deficit and the debt, good. If you can't, got a little work to do. And where we're headed, our trajectory, our fiscal trajectory is like a ski slope. Now, you may like the bills that I've put forth, you may not. That's okay, but I encourage you, regardless of party affiliation, to understand where these things are happening. This is an all-hands-on-deck time in America. It is not a normal time, and the decisions before us have profound consequences. So it is by that engagement, by the engagement of every one of us, which I think is that's how our country has gotten to where it has, is that each American, we don't just rely on our leaders. In fact, we question them and we hold them accountable. But it's by doing that that we will not only survive, I don't want to survive, we want to prosper and meet that deep obligation that we have to the next generation of Americans, to leave the blessings of liberty and freedom. And we'll do that. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Ron, I think you're coming up.
Thank you. This is very thoughtful and stirring speech, and I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
My question concerns your approach to trying to solve the issues of Social Security and Medicare. Both were enacted. We didn't live as long as we live now. We weren't as healthy as long as we live now. So part one of my question is, why can't we, over time, gradually phase in, and I don't mean over 60 years, eligibility to age 72 each? That's part one. And part two is with Medicare, why can't we have personal responsibility? So if you want to not be responsible for your smoking and other habits, if you want to pack down those burgers, you have some responsibility in terms of what the companies can charge you for your health care, which they don't do with obesity, not law, living law, and so that your eligibility.
Thank you for the question, and the principles that you are putting forth in general terms. I mean, this idea that we ought to just recognize that longevity has increased significantly, and we haven't adjusted the eligibility dates accordingly. That's one reason we're in the situation that we're in. The Path to Prosperity does that. People who are 55 and older see no changes in their Medicare whatsoever, none, nada, zip. But as you get to 54 and below, in a responsible way, and kind of in a very, very graduated way, it does start to adjust those, and I think that's the right way to go. Now, with respect to lifestyle choices, use of alcohol, use of tobacco products and things like that, that would require some thought. I haven't really given that, frankly, that much thought as to how we would incorporate that. I do think that, I think all of us agree as a general principle that Americans ought to be responsible for the decisions they make, either if they're good ones or if they're poor ones. That's part of the liberty and freedom. Means you have the freedom to make a dumb decision, and you just have to suffer the consequence, or conversely, enjoy the benefits and fruits of a good decision. I appreciate the question. Yes, Rowena.
When I was up in Congress lobbying to get a law passed for the food industry, when I was up...
Is it working?
Anyway. For the food industry, one thing that we had to bring back was the Regulatory Flexibility Act, which we've had for many, many, many years, several decades, but no one ever used it. And this was a good law passed by Congress, but FDA got a hold of it and messed it up really badly. It was the Labeling Act of 1990. But in any event, I heard you sort of refer to it in a casual way about talking to bankers and saying, we can do it if it's this way, but we can't do it if it's that way. Now, most of the states have passed the Regulatory Flexibility Act to be acted on within their state as well as a federal thing. But I just wanted to bring it up to you because it affects business grossly, and they have to, every law they pass, they have to have the effects on mostly small business, but all business.
Thank you, Rowena. And so it's the Regulatory Flexibility Act. I'm on, I don't know that I'll ever stop learning. If I know about something, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll share that with you. I have not heard about that.
Congressman in Florida that retired that emailed me because he said this will help in your back.
Oh, I appreciate it. And what is being shared, I refer to this as the wisdom of the district. and I can learn and become a better representative. I met last night with the realtors. I met this morning with the Tidewater Builders Association, and they came in ready to make this case of co-sponsorship of a bill that would help their industry. And I only got about 20 minutes in the meeting. I said, I like this. Let's do this, you know. And so it's the wisdom of the district, Rowena, and I appreciate that. And Esmel, if you'd help me, we'll make sure we understand what that bill is, and if we can bring it forward or co-sponsor it or vote for it, and it agrees with our core principles and values, I'll do that. Thank you. I have no idea what time it is, but Delcino, how are you?
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for... I'm one of those wise ones in the district, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
Question on energy. What efforts are in Congress right now to reverse President Obama's decision to extend the moratorium on the drilling? And two, is there any effort to streamline the process for the permitting for using wind? Because I know we're having some issues with that right here in Virginia.
Yes, on the first question, I voted and co-sponsored 3 different acts that address the moratorium, and this is where this is not personal to the president, but I'll tell you, there is a great, I would just ask you to slow down. There's a great disconnect between what is said and what is done. And you know, from a private sector standpoint, I'm really not impressed by rhetoric or what someone says. I'm impressed, and I think we all are, by action, what is done. And so as I look and see what, you know, has been said about you know, the drilling offshore, it's not matching up with reality, I guess. Well, to the extent that they've shut down everything off the coast of Virginia, that is a reality. But even off the coast of, even in the Gulf, I mean, there's just not enough being done there. And so the short answer is, I voted and co-sponsored 3 specific bills, and we can share those with you, that directly address those. They'll be sent to the Senate, and we just have to call Senator Webb and Senator Warner and say, come on now, come on, help us out here, come on, and let's go to the president in a responsible way, in a respectful way, and say, Mr. President, please sign these. Please let Virginians get back to work. And your second question escapes me.
Process for the wind.
Oh, the wind, sure. You know how long it takes to get a wind permit. You're immersed in this. I think it's about 7 to 9 years here over in Great Britain. We think of the British as being stodgy. They did pull off a nice wedding, but we think of them as you know, just having, you know, kind of slow, and you know, you can get a wind permit in 2 years there in Great Britain. So anything, that's the, when I talk about regulations, you might say, what's Scott talking about? Well, that's one of them, is just compressing the time, because capital goes where it can get a return. If I went to my friend Jeff Ainsley over here, good businessman, I said, Jeff, I'm starting a wind company. That's great, Scott. I've heard good things about wind. How much do you need? I said, well, I'm trying to get $10,000, or 10 people to give $10,000 a piece or whatever. He said, yeah, okay, I can come up with that. Now, when can I get a return? And if I said, Jeff, I'll know if we can get the permit 7 to 9 years from now. Capital's not going to flow that way. Now, if I said, Jeff, I can get you, I think we'll know if we're going to have a permit in about 2 years, and the returns after that, look at the pro forma here. It looks pretty good. It looks like we'll get what I call an entrepreneurial return. You got to be in the 25% range for me. If I'm going to put money at risk, I want to be in that 20 to 25% range, you know, where you can actually make it worth it, because you may not get anything back. So that's we want to streamline that, Delcino. And Shep, he's a tall, strong man, and I think he's telling me I'm done. So I'm done. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.